In a world drowning in noise, where truth is often buried beneath layers of propaganda and misinformation, there's a need for a different kind of a network. A network of creators that cuts through the clutter, that doesn't shy away from tough topics, and that delivers the unfiltered truth. We are Trim Radio Network. We are creators. We are innovators. We are investigators. We're the ones who aren't afraid to call a spade a spade. If you're ready to participate in thought-provoking discussions, informational topics, and of course today's biggest headlines, subscribe to our YouTube channel today. We're Trim Radio Network. We're cutting the bull and serving the truth.
Welcome to Revelation, where prophecy meets science. Join host Peter Kling, the Einstein of Biblical Prophecy, as he uncovers ancient truths with modern insight. Prepare to see the world in a whole new light. And now your host, Peter Kling. Welcome
good
to
evening.
Revelation, where prophecy meets science. Join host
Good
Peter
evening,
Kling,
everybody.
the Einstein of Biblical Prophecy.
There we go. There's always a glitch. You gotta love it. There's always a glitch somewhere, but we overcome, and you gotta have faith that you overcome. Perseverance. And so I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on this Christmas Day, the 25th of December, 2025. Interesting sequential numbers there. Today is a fantastic day, and people have been celebrating the birth of Christ on this day, the birth of the Messiah, God's Son, Jesus, Yeshua, for quite some time, all my lifetime, but it wasn't always Christmas. And the truth actually is, Jesus, but most biblical scholars essentially point to a time slot, but most agree on about the 4th to the 6th of October. And that has to do with the command of everybody had to go back to their birth town and register because they wanted to conduct a census. And that's where Joseph was headed with Mary, having been pregnant, when this day, or when the day came for his birth. And as the church usually does, they would take a Roman pagan holiday, or any kind of pagan holiday. It wasn't just Roman, but that's where it started. And it's been the same celebration of the same gods that have been here since Sumeria and the days of the Anunnaki. They just give them different names. But you have the birth, or we got Saturnalia. And so it was given a Christian name after Constantine. And so it became the adopted time for Christ's birth, or it's actually a worship of the sun, the sun god, Ra. The sun god in ancient Sumeria was Nimrod. Tammuz was a star god, a child of the sun. And so the S-O-N of God replaced the S-U-N. And so, hey, it's still the birth of a son, but it's just not the son that everybody thinks. And it's interesting when you look at the image and the iconography of Mary holding Jesus, a very Caucasian Mary and a very Caucasian baby. Some of the iconography from the church gives them crowns and lots of jewels. And yet, Jesus was born in a barn, basically. in a manger. And so there was no room at the inn. And so they made do with what they had to make do with. And so this is a very simplistic time. And Jesus' actual birth is never recorded in the scriptures. Jesus never celebrated his birth. But the one thing that he did celebrate and commanded his apostles to celebrate was the memorial of his death, which is in the spring of the year. We know exactly what day that is. Nisan 14. Everything runs by the Jewish calendar or by the Hebrew calendar. And so, that's easy enough to calculate it out once you know the formula. It all has to do with the spring equinox. 14 days after the new moon closest to the spring equinox is Nisan 14. So that's how that operates. Every once in a while they throw an extra month in there, but the month of Nisan starts off the Hebrew year. It used to be in the fall, but they changed it to the spring. And Jesus said, "Hey, remember my death until I return." Where are we now? We are at his return. 2029, 3.5 years from now, because it was the fall that Jesus started his ministry. The 2000th year anniversary. Trump's having a celebration this year. Wants to a new Independence Day, the 250th anniversary of the birth of the United States of America. Will it still be incorporated then? We'll have to see if it becomes a republic or if it continues to be a corporation run by the mother of all corporations, which essentially it's the Vatican. The Romans invented corporation, the Vatican perfected incorporation. Go figure. Oh, we're a 501c3. No taxes for me. Yeah, no, not quite. I've paid my share of taxes, as everyone probably else who's listening to me has. And then we find out, oh, we stole your money. Yeah, you did. I know you did in many more ways than one. But that's not why we're here. There is one great thing that happens this time of year. People start putting away their animosity, their hatred. They start thinking about other people. They start thinking about their family. They remember, hey, I remember when we had Christmas in it when I was a kid. And I got all sorts of toys and everybody was together. There's all the aunts and the uncles and the cousins and everybody's got toys and everybody's eating large, there's cookies and sweets and all sorts of good food. Wow. And we're all getting presents. Lots of presents. Yeah, what a great time. Now, let me ask you, what if every day was like that? What if every day was just like today? Oh, that might get boring. Really? It would get boring running into somebody who's courteous, going to a store or a shop, or just walking down the street, catching someone's eye, have a great day. Why isn't that always what it should be? And so we should start to practice that every day. That's something I've been doing for the longest time. I try to make people laugh. Wherever I go, I try to make people laugh, or I make them think. One or the other. but I'll say probably 80 to 90% of the time that I'm out and meeting other people or shopping, going down to the local grocery store, going to the big city, which isn't really all that big, but meeting people leave them feeling positive about themselves. And there's a joy that starts to go back and forth, even among strangers who don't know each other. But what do we have today? You start a conversation with somebody, and before the conversation is over, they want to call you a racist. You want to talk about the decisive. I was told a story by a good friend. As a matter of fact, we might be hearing more of him as the days go on. I did a radio show with him for several years. Dr. Jason Rand. He was telling me that he went to have breakfast with a friend of his that he had known for years, and was their routine. Every week they'd go to breakfast together, and or have lunch together, but once a week. And one day this person said, "Well, we can't be friends anymore." And Jason was like, "Why?" "Well, you're a Trump supporter." Oh my God. Dun, 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 dun. That was a death knell. It was a literal death knell for their friendship that they had. Wow. Dividing the people, divide and conquer. Think about it. Divide and conquer. We have to reverse that trend and start to become more unified. Now, you want to take caution. I'm not going out and saying, "Oh, well, say hello to everybody," because there's some pretty nasty people out there that are just never going to change. We've got a large criminal element that's at large right now, that's taken over a lot of neighborhoods, mostly through drug trafficking, but human trafficking too. And sometimes it touches home a lot closer than what many people experience. We hear of children being kidnapped. Geez, I remember when I was a kid, a long, long time ago, back in the days when there were 3 channels on the TV, they would run a public service announcement, and it was about being kidnapped. And they would tell the kids, "Don't talk to strangers," right on the TV. And don't take a ride from anybody. Things like that. Just basic common sense that kids should pay attention to. And it was a public service announcement. How come we don't have those today? So there are people that we do want to, by necessity, must avoid. Here's I often wonder, because you want to test yourself from time to time, and I had I always had friends of different races, but it just happened to be in a car with this friend of mine with his mother, and they were black, and she seemed like a very nice lady. I was friends with her son and daughter-in-law, and they had a very nice family. But we were going through uh, a bad part of town, and which unfortunately the majority of the population were black. And I checked my door to make sure that the door is locked, and I turned to my friend's mom, and I was like, you know, I hope you don't think I'm any kind of prejudiced or anything, but I go through these neighborhoods. I always lock my doors. And she said, "Oh no, honey, you ain't prejudiced at all. You're being smart. I go through these neighborhoods and I lock my doors." Yeah, bad neighborhood. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a bad neighborhood based on color anymore. But that's a whole another situation, and that's an on purpose. And you can thank at least one party within the government that concentrates on disenfranchising uh, people of race. And now they flipped the script where it's like, well, actually, interestingly enough, once you count all the illegal aliens that are in this country, I understand that Caucasian people, white people, are not the majority anymore. Not that I really care one way or the other, but culturally, America is not, or it is not what, or I say the United States is not what America was supposed to be about. Yes, everybody has the right to believe it the way that they want to believe, but we also claim to be a Christian country. So I guess as a Christian country, we can do things to help fellow Christians, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Um, Trump bombed. Trump gave an interesting Christmas present to Nigeria. Trump bombed Nigeria today. Or he gave the go-ahead to go do it anyway, and they did it. And Nigeria was warned to get the problem that they have with ISIS in that country under control, or the United States was going to take action. And what ISIS was doing was uh, literally executing Christians in Christian neighborhoods. They had no choice. Round up the neighborhood, kill them. Wow. There are some horrific things that happen in Africa because of religion. Hutus and the Tutsis come to mind. That was an absolute nightmare. Uh, Two different tribes, a lot of them of the same religion, went to the same church. And then one tribe's church was fighting with the other tribe's church and inciting the riots, which led to the death of hundreds of thousands of people. They hacked each other to death. Lived in the same neighborhood. Think about that. So, what spurs things like that on? It's an insanity. It's an insanity that sets in with some people, and you will never be able to change them. And it gets tied back into Revelation through Babylon the Great, where the religions of the world are destroyed. Babylon the Great, the mother of the harlots of all religion. It starts in Mesopotamia. It starts with the ancient Sumerians. It starts with the Anunnaki. It wasn't just the Anunnaki, because they celebrated gods of every sort in Babylon. They were meant their mission was to defy Father Yahweh, or Yahuwah, the creator, the true creator and father of everything that we know, everything in existence. They did whatever they could to defy that entity and carry on worship of anything else but that entity, the one who we should connect our power with. It's not a true worship of that entity that calls itself Yahuwah, Yahweh, Jehovah. The true connection is a family connection on a spiritual level, on a soul level. It's not the meat bag that we occupy. God created man out of the dust of the earth, out of the elements of the ground. I don't know, before inflation, we used to be, we used to be worth about a buck 79 at our elements, and then that went up to about 250. I don't know what it is right now, what those elements are worth, um, but not very much. What makes us important is it also says he blew the breath of his breath into man's nostrils and brought life, and he became a living soul. Let us create man in our image. So that gives us all a connection right back to our creator, right back to Yahuwah, which is the sound our lungs make when we breathe. It's the code written on our DNA. Yeah, that they actually did find the God's name literally encoded within our DNA. Think about that. You want to talk about being in a simulation? Except we get to live out the simulation within certain rules. And the simulation isn't what it was supposed to be. And you can we all create our own destiny, basically. If you're not creating what you're going to do tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, then somebody is creating it for you. And so the more that you can create, the more spiritually powerful we can become through that process of creation. And so that's kind of where, when we think about Jesus' birth and the way that everybody tends to respect everybody else during this time of the year, why isn't it that way every day, every week? And it all falls to basic common courtesy. Yeah, we live with some strange people. I've seen more different hair colors than I ever remember seeing before. Um, a lot of personal body art, more than I remember seeing when I was much younger. Personal expression, which goes, wow, sometimes to the extreme. And so you have to wonder what affects a person that always goes to the extreme. Well, we live in an extreme world, and we are at the most extreme that the system of evil has ever become. And that's one of the reasons why when I started the show with Revelation, it was important to look at the beast of Revelation to get an idea, to get an understanding and a comprehension of what we are up against and what we are living with as we get deeper and deeper into these last days. And it's, I was thinking tonight about, oh, it's Christmas. How many people are going to be listening? Probably less than half that already do, but most people listen after the show, and I really don't want to miss doing a show and bringing information because the information changes, but the message doesn't. The message is and always will be, we are living in these last days of the satanic system of evil, and we are witnessing change on a wholesale level. And there's probably been more change going on now. Look at the political scene. Didn't Obama run his campaign on change? Where did that get us? Right now, he fled the country. He's living in England. A few hours. It's interesting. The news that came out of Washington, or it seems to have come out of Washington today. Maybe some of it was released yesterday, but uh, Pam Bondi has a slam dunk on connecting Obama with election interference, and they're seeking to initially indict. I believe it was Brennan. Oh, is that why Obama moved to England? I don't think that's going to do you much good, considering when Trump went to England, he rode in the royal coach. You may have just hopped your butt right into the fire. We'll see how this works out as time goes on. Um, there's a lot that needs to happen yet, which hasn't happened. Right now, as we've talked about in looking at these beasts, we are living within the governmental system of these beasts which have come to power, but now we're looking at change. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, everybody's like, oh, the UN's a good thing. Look, we're taking care of the hot spots, and look at all the NGOs which are associated with the United Nations that help people all around the world. You mean like the World Health Organization? Yeah, them. Yeah, led by the WEF. You get all these three-letter agencies, and it's like, or not just agencies, but organizations. And they're all jockeying for power within a system that is doomed for failure and collapse. And we're going to have to go through this. But, we live in interesting times. And I knew a little bit about what I wanted to talk about tonight. But I wasn't sure because I didn't want to get into the depths of the origins of Christmas and Saturnalia and all the celebrations that went on. That's not important. Knowing the truth is. So hey, Jesus was born in the beginning of October, and he died in the spring of 33 CE. And we're coming up on the 2000th year anniversary of that. Think about it. Think about it. Exactly 2,000 years. What kind of celebration is the world going to have then? Let's see what kind of celebration takes place in 2029. See what celebration takes place in the spring of 2033. Keep on doing this in memory of me until I return. 2,000 years later? I don't know. What should I say? Hello, Comet 3-Eye Atlas? Was that a messenger? I'm not going to get bogged down with that, but it's if everything that they're saying about that. Well, I can't say everything because there is a lot of hype. You got to find reliable sources who know what they're talking about. I was watching a video with Avi Loeb, and then I saw another video with Avi Loeb, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. This guy only has one suit and one tie, one shirt. He's always in the same office. Yeah. Hello, CGI. Boy, you got to pay attention to what's going on. If it sounds too weird, it might be, but things are going to get weird. But as I was thinking about this earlier, what came to mind, just looking at some YouTube videos, and there was one about the Nephilim. And it was AI generated, very well done, or CG, whatever you. It wasn't animated, but computer animated. and done pretty well. And it was referring to the book of Enoch, making references to there. And I thought that was interesting. And then there was another one. And then there was another one. I was like, maybe God's telling me something, just as in the days of Noah. And yeah, just as in the days of Noah. It's interesting. And I spent to give an idea, to get a good comprehension of what these scriptures actually meant and what was going on here. It's taken several years of study to just be sure of a few different points to make sure that you're accurate. It's not like reading something and say, "Oh, well, this says this, so this must be." No, there's a lot of deep research and a lot of scripture analyzation right down to the word being used. And then you look at it through scientific eyes and you start to see the picture a lot more clearly in what was actually happening, because you got to pay attention to the details. But what's quite interesting, and I just want to read this because it's pertinent. It's actually very pertinent to where we are today. It's Matthew, the 24th chapter, and the 36th and 37th verse, actually the 38th verse as well. But it says, concerning that day and hour, and this is Jesus speaking, he says, concerning that day and hour, nobody knows, neither the angels of the heavens nor the Son, but only the Father. For just as in the days of Noah were, so will the presence of the Son of Man will be. For as they were in those days before the flood, eating and drinking, men marrying and women being given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and they took no note until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the presence of the Son of Man will be. So it's interesting. What were they doing? They were partying. They were eating. They were drinking. They were marrying. They were celebrating. They were being given in marriage. Well, wait a minute. Weren't the Nephilim on the ground in those days? Now we're going to come into a generational thing. And this is where examining and getting a good comprehension of the scriptures comes in. Because when we go back to Genesis chapter 6, it says that when God saw what was going on the earth, he felt hurt at his heart that he even created man. It got that bad. Could you imagine you have a child that's gone astray and they just become worse and worse, and they're doing things that you have no idea where they're even thinking about, how this even came into their mind? And no matter what you do, they just get worse. I actually know of incidences like that where kids finally wound up in jail doing a long time because they just kept on getting worse and worse and worse. Bad management, I guess. I'm not sure what to say there, but that's exactly what was going on the earth. And so God turned around and he said, I am going to shorten the lifespan of man to 120 years. Now, Noah lived to be over 900 years old, 950 something, if I recall correctly, but he's over 900 years old. And wait a minute, I'm going to cut the lifespan to 120 years. So if you consider the age of Noah, how many, he was alive when the Nephilim were on the earth, but if the lifespan was cut to 120 years, that badness would have led up the Nephilim wouldn't have been around, and they were accused of destroying the earth. That the Nephilim, these giants, much bigger than what's depicted in what people are calling Nephilim today. We're talking about critters that were well over 50, 60, 70 feet high, 80 feet high. Um, and it's interesting that the shorts that I saw on YouTube weren't putting them that high, but they were every bit of 30 feet high. You know, they were much taller than that, according to the Book of Enoch. Um, Truly giants, not just somebody with a pituitary gland issue where they just keep on growing until they reach, what we would consider a giant today, 9, 10 feet tall. But we also have people that are very short, little people that are among us as well. So in genetic diversity, you're still going to get an oddity out of it every once in a while where you're outside of the average of people on the planet. Unfortunately, we are now in those same days. But the planet stopped being under distress. If Noah lived, it took Noah 150 years to build the ark. That would have been a whole generation gone. So how many generations came and went after the Nephilim all died? People say, "Oh, the Nephilim died in the flood." Not so sure about that. They may have been dead before the flood, but yeah, any of them that was still alive, depending on where they were, they could very well have been in areas where they weren't around Noah, because if they were around Noah, they would have crushed the ark. They would have destroyed it, kicked it down the road like a tin can. And so that they weren't around there for 150 years. That there were animals to be saved. That the Nephilim made everything in sight, and it was the men and women who were eating and drinking and marrying and being given in marriage. So there was plenty of food. So the Nephilim could not have been around anymore. That only makes logical sense. The Watchers would have already been thrown into Tartarus, into the pit of the abyss. And so there would have been a time of celebration. We're going to go into that same period today. We're going to see things get very bad over the next few months, maybe a year. But we're going to get to a point where all of a sudden people are going to be celebrating again. They're going to be marrying and being given in marriage. We are going to reach a time of peace and security. And I've talked about this several times. We're told that when the nations declare peace and security, then the end would be instantly upon them, just like the pangs of distress of a pregnant woman. When a woman goes into labor, when it's, there could be a false labor, but when those labor pains start, there ain't no stopping them. And the result is going to be a child, a birth. And so what we will find is when we get to this point of peace and security, like having security and having the world at peace. We know it ain't going to be next week. Trump just bombed Nigeria today, and we got the thing going on with Venezuela, and we got what's happening in Ukraine and It breaks my heart. Ukraine is being used by the European Union to fight a war with Russia that they could never win. And so the Ukrainian people are being sacrificed. It breaks my heart. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine, made a lot of friends. I don't know who's alive and who's not alive. Very sad. Um, and I've been from Kiev to Donetsk. I've seen a lot of the to Odessa, to Chiniga. So I've been all over that country, literally. Breaks my heart. Breaks my heart. But we're going to get to this point where that's going to stop because we'll have peace and security. And when the nations declare that their time is done, it's over for them. And if we plan right and we have faith, and it's going to take faith, because the faith allows us to connect. I'll talk about this more in a second. But those of us who are truly looking for this to happen, those of us who are educated to the facts and the truth, will be able to make those connections that they have to make on a spiritual level. And I'm not talking about religious. I'm talking about being part of a family at the soul level. We're here to have a 3D experience, a physical experience. We are here to, the whole reason we were planted here was to make more little children of God, to populate a physical dimension across all of the dimensions. And unfortunately, under the satanic rule, we live in a physical world of parasites at the worst level, because it's the parasites that are running the show. Well, don't you like what Trump's doing? Hey, I like what the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords has planned. And sorry, that's not necessarily Trump's agenda. Trump is to get us to the point of peace and security. Personally, I think his timing was a little bit bad. Okay, Christians in Nigeria, here's your Christmas present. Kaboom! Goodbye, ISIS. Merry Christmas. On Jesus' birthday, you're going to kill people. In the name of Jesus? Huh? Whatever. Whatever. I'm just here to make the observation and take notes. Yeah. And so, did we really just have a bombing or destruction to help save Christianity? We just destroyed part of Islam because this is an Islamic terrorist group. Or at least that's what they're getting billed as. We know where this, well, we can be pretty sure where their support comes from. But I can tell you who started that plague. That plague was started by a previous administration, who's the president, though, just fled to England. I recall the Secretary of State a year before ISIS was on the scene that they were going to fund the rebels. They would be very well funded. I believe that was August of 2012. That was actually January 2014. We were plagued with ISIS. ISIS. Interestingly enough, they had offices all around the world, including 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue in the Ronald Reagan building. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Yeah. There's more to that story, but yeah, that's something I uncovered personally. And I started talking about it. And it was September 14th, 2014, when I found that out. I tracked it down. I was like, "You're kidding me." Offices at 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. And they were a paramilitary training company, ISIS. And I started talking about it on the radio and different shows that I did. Interestingly enough, they changed their logo to ISI. It's like, ah, take that. And I'm still around to talk about it. Thank you, Jehovah. Father Yahweh, may you be praised. um, or as I always say, there before the grace of God, go I. And that's the only reason I'm still here. But we live in interesting times, and it's having that faith, that comprehension, that understanding that allows us to make that spiritual connection. And I guess that's where we're going to go with as we're getting toward the end of this show. Um, we bury that, and we shouldn't. I was talking to our producer, Rascala, who does a fantastic job, overcomes a lot of the problems that we have within the network, which mostly is due to somebody in Rumble doesn't like me. I don't understand. But yeah, we're always available on YouTube. That works out quite well, strangely enough. But regardless, you're searching for the message, you'll find it. But getting back to where I was headed, and really it's where we started on this day that most people will remember the birth of the Son of God, or the Son of Father Yahweh, Yahuwah, Jehovah. We remember Jesus, Yeshua. And here again, you have to be careful with this, because there are two Jesus, but there's only one Yeshua. That's a whole nother show. But Yeshua, the son of Joseph, the carpenter's son, didn't go to the Himalayas, didn't go to India, didn't go all over the world and study with Buddha and commiserate with that. That's a whole different section which comes out of Egypt, and it gets connected to Cleopatra. Actually, her grandson, was taken out of the area and educated across the the Middle East, approaching the Far East. That's it in a nutshell. Do your own research. But the carpenter's son lived among the Jews, most likely part of or connected to the Essene sect. Um, so they were very knowledgeable. They studied the scriptures. We don't have a fully accurate comprehension of the Essenes, but they are the ones most likely responsible for preserving the Dead Sea Scrolls. And within the Dead Sea Scrolls, there were 5 copies, I believe 5 copies, maybe more, of the Book of Enoch. So it seemed to be, I think it may have actually been considerably more. But that was an important book to the Essenes. It was definitely a holy book. So we're living in those same days as where Enoch lived, and Enoch was the prophet who prophesied against the watchers that had fallen from heaven, the sons of the true God, as Genesis calls it. and their children, the Nephilim. And in my personal opinion, the Book of Enoch is totally congruent with the rest of the scriptures. What's recorded in Enoch, some of the things are also recorded in Revelation. So use your own discretion, but it's there. But it shows our connection to our Creator. And we have gotten to the point here in our society where some people don't know what sex they are or they were born as. Now, there are, as I said, there's anomalies across the board, but now we're into a way of life for people. I was born a man, but I decided to be a woman because that fits a whole lot better. Oh, that's interesting because I was born a woman, but I decided to become a man because I thought that was more interesting. Oh, good. You want to go out? Yeah, we can have babies too. Holy moly, can you imagine what those kids are going to be like? Let's see. Mommy thinks she's a woman, but she's really a man, and Daddy thinks that she's a man, but she's really a woman. Wait, huh? Okay. Yeah, believe it or not, I saw a video about that. Two people were being interviewed. It was somebody's short clip that they were playing. I'm like, how does that work? So we live in strange times. What can I say? And so if we don't make a connection back to the Creator, where the heck are we going to wind up? And that connection is made at the soul level. It happens through prayer and meditation. And as I was saying earlier, if you're not creating your future, then somebody else is creating it for you. And the way that we create our future is that we meditate on it. We visualize what we want. I'm not saying, oh God, please help me. I need to do this. That helps too. That helps too. And I've heard some very interesting things that just happened, miracles of prayer. I've had my own. I've had my own. I was in a very dire situation once upon a time, and I prayed consistently for 4.5 days. If I wasn't praying, I'd fallen asleep. If I wasn't sleeping, I prayed. Didn't eat. Did drink water, maybe some juice. Didn't eat. 4.5 days. I prayed. And when the whole situation was over, I laughed. Yeah, I had some things to endure, but when it was all over, I laughed. So who had my back? And I got a very, very interesting uh, spiritual, shall we say, a message from the Father that he had my back through it all. Yeah. And so we see miracles happen because we put our energy into that. It takes me back to when Jesus was walking through the crowd of people and he said, "Who touched me?" And the apostle said, "Well, what do you mean, who touched you, Lord? This is like Mardi Gras here." Not exactly, but he was walking through a crowd of people. And if you've ever been pressed in a crowd of people, you feel people all around you. I did go to Mardi Gras once, and I was pressed by so many people. I could swear I could just lift my feet up off the ground and be carried along in the crowd. Yeah. Who touched me? Who touched me? Well, Lord, what do you mean? Everybody's touching me. He said, no, somebody touched me. And finally, the woman who had been sick for a long time, she said, I touched you, Lord. And Jesus looked at her and he said, "Your faith has healed you, has made you well." Because she said, I knew if I only could touch your outer garment, that I would be healed. Who touched me? She had so much faith that she drew the energy right from Jesus herself. It was her own faith that healed her. And so when we start, and a lot, it's not magical. You can't wish stuff. It takes planning because we're working on cosmic time, essentially. Sometimes things happen right away, but other times things have to come together. And if you're planning a future, I'll give you a good example. Go build a house. What do you mean build a house? Well, you want to build a house, what do you got to do? Well, first you got to dig a hole in the ground. Then you got to put the footings in. And then you got to build the walls. And then you got to put the electric and the plumbing in and close it all in, get your roof on, of course. And then put the insulation in, the sheetrock. Okay. I actually did that myself. I built my own house. Um, Took 9 months to get it closed in. Took 2 years to finish it. No, actually, we closed it in. My father and I put it all together, and we closed it in a matter of 3 weeks. But I did the rest of the work, and we moved in where we got the certificate of occupancy 8 months later, and that was 90% me hammering the nails and doing the things that needed to be done to make that house a home or livable. It didn't happen overnight, is my point. You had to have the vision first. You had to get the vision on paper. There's a process to it. And it's making that connection that happens on a spiritual level, which starts off at creation, and then it happens. It's like finding that somebody special, someone who you can actually relate to, someone who you can comprehend and they can comprehend you. And then what happens, that the closer you are with this person, all of a sudden something clicks and you know each other's thoughts. You're apart and the phone rings. Oh, I was just thinking about you. Yep, I know. That's why I called, because I can feel you thinking about me. Or I was just thinking about you. And there's where our connection starts to come. We look at everyday things and say, now, how can I make this more consistent? I guess that has actually been the driving force, and we're going to be picking that up again. We might talk about this more next week because we've been pointing toward this direction for several weeks now. But how do I become consistent in creating my future? I think back to where it all started for me. I was 9 years old, and I had a dream that literally came true. Not that it was anything, exceptional. It was pretty much what I used to do every night, take my dog for a walk. It was just this one night was different. And I got to see the future. And I had to know how that was possible. 9 years old, and I'm contemplating the universe. And I knew about the prophecy with Samuel, and how Yahuwah used Samuel in order to give the high priest a message. So I was thinking, and he was 8 years old. I was like, but why me, Lord? Well, Samuel's only 8. I'm a year older than Samuel was. But how did that happen? What was the mechanism? And that was the turning point that made me look to science to find the answers. Yes, I still have my biblical studies, but I had to answer it. I had to know how it was possible to see the future. to see a future event. And I've had that happen several times at very critical points where I got to see a future event and I thought, you know what? If I'm not there, there's no way that could possibly happen. Could it? Yeah. And so you avoid a situation. Well, did it happen? I don't know. I wasn't there. But I know for sure it happened right where I saw it happening, but I took a different route. And so it didn't happen to me. But in what I was shown, if I didn't take a different route, it was going to happen to me. And so we need to make that spiritual connection with everything that we're doing. And so with that, I think we're just about out of time here. I do appreciate everybody joining us tonight. I wish everybody a most happy holiday. And may every day be as the joy you feel this day, and spread that joy with others for the rest of the year. We'll be doing a New Year's Eve, a New Year's show too, I guess, next week. I believe, or New Year's Eve. One of the, I guess it's New Year's Eve. I don't know. I got to look at the calendar just to make sure. And so we'll be back then. Please be sure to listen to all of the shows on the Trim Radio Network. We all try to bring you the most accurate information. Tomorrow night, you will hear the Positive Podcast at 8 o'clock with Maggie Hart. A very inspiring and funny show. But she's very humorous. And then Red Pill Reality on Saturday night. And that is our producer's show. Ruscola Steppens' show is there. And I told you, one of these days I'm going to write all these shows down and I'll have them all on a list and tell you, hey, but most of all, give us a like, leave a comment. Thumbs up is always nice. And please join the network and share us with all of your friends. And with that, I'm going to say love and blessings to all, and to all a good night.